What is going on, YouTube? So coming back today with my next college football preview. And right now I got the Texas A&M Aggies. Just finished up the West Virginia Mountaineers earlier today. So moving back into the SEC, a team that's kind of sitting right in the middle of the SEC West, and also a team that will be breaking in quite a few new starters this year. So let's go ahead and start with my first of three key players, and starting with the OU transfer, Trevor Knight. So Trevor Knight coming in, you obviously don't really know what to expect from him. I don't think he's for sure won the quarterback battle yet. I mean, Jake Hubenak's still got a chance, but honestly, probably not much of one. Hubenak wasn't even able to get them a victory in the was it the Holiday? I can't remember if they were in the Holiday or Music City Bowl last year. Let me look that up right quick. But anyway, I think it is Trevor Knight's for the taking. I'm going to get more into Trevor Knight later with, looking Music City Bowl is what it was anyway. But obviously, finding out what Trevor Knight you're going to get this year is obviously a big thing. He could be great, he could be bad. You really don't know. He's one of the more unpredictable quarterbacks in college football, very inconsistent. I think if Texas A&M needs anything this year, they need a consistent quarterback. So hopefully for Texas A&M's sake, the right Trevor Knight shows out and they can get under the right direction. Now, my second key player is Christian Kirk. I normally don't like to put a star like that of that level as a key player in this offense. But again, the wide receiving core is going to have to be on point this year. I think it will be. They got a very talented set of wide receivers right now in College Station. Ricky Seals-Jones, who seems like he's been there forever now. And then you also got Speedy Noyle, the former five-star recruit, and then also Christian Kirk, all-SEC player last year, one of the better freshmen in the country last year as well. And they're going to have to rely very heavily on the wide receivers because they do not have a returning running back that was a starter last year. James White will most likely be the starting running back this year. So while they do have three returning offensive linemen, that's not even those three returning offensive linemen are pretty young. Well, one of them's pretty young. Keaton Sutherland, being a sophomore, started as a true freshman. But anyway, it cannot be said enough how important Christian Kirk is going to be to Texas A&M this year. So my third key player is Armani Watts, the free safety for Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M's defense does have 7 starters returning this year, including 3 starters in the secondary. Both safeties are coming back. So I would put Myles Garrett, obviously, is the biggest name along this defense. Dalen Mack and Deshaun Hall are also pretty big names. But I think that the defensive line is pretty much as set as it's going to get this year. I like what they got in place right now. Like I said, Dalen Mack I think will be a very solid starter this year. Former 5-star recruit as well. But Armani Watts, a guy that's going to have to be the heart and soul of this secondary. A secondary that was actually a little bit underrated last year. I'll get more into that later. But you're breaking in 2 new starters at corner. I think Nick Harvey could actually have a big year. But then you also got Donovan Wilson and Justin Evans also returning for their junior years. So he'll have some help beside him. So my first of 2 X factors is to see which Trevor Knight shows up. So I mentioned this with Trevor Knight. I mean, if you watched any college football really over the last 3 years, you probably know about his Sugar Bowl performance in 2014, beating Alabama, and then all the hype that OU went into the 2014 season with Trevor Knight as a starter, and he didn't even make it to the end of the year as the starter. So, it's something where he is very talented, and, he has his games, but at OU he was extremely inconsistent. Like I said, you never knew which guy was going to show up. Now, it happens a lot where a guy goes to a different system and it just works. And that could be the thing here. But, again, it's something that you got to take with a grain of salt. And obviously Texas A&M fans realize that there's no guaranteed thing with Trevor Knight coming over. So my second of 2 X factors is for Texas A&M to have a strong secondary. Like I said earlier, they had one of the more underrated secondaries in the country last year. Granted, they do lose their 2 starting cornerbacks in Brandon Williams and Devontae Harris, so that's going to hurt. Like I said, they got to break in two brand new corners. So That is something to watch out for, but this was a secondary that was 4th in passing yards allowed last year and only 166 yards per game. And they only allowed 10 passing touchdowns last year to opponents. So, like I said, one of the more underrated secondaries in college football, and that's something that's going to have to continue if they want to have a success in 2016. So my trap game for Texas A&M is South Carolina. Again, going up and down their schedule, it's kind of hard to figure out which one that would be. South Carolina played them pretty close last year at Kyle Field. They lost only 35-28 in what was it? A very rough season for South Carolina, excuse me. But they do have Texas A&M does have to travel to Columbia this year. I think South Carolina, will be a little bit better this year. It's hard for them to be worse. Will Muschamp, I'm still not a fan of that hire, but that was an entirely separate discussion. So you look at the schedule, it comes in between two pretty tough games. Arkansas is a big game for Texas A&M this year if they want to be able to make a bowl game. You know, games like Arkansas, Mississippi State, Auburn, you're going to have to be able to win those if you want to make a bowl game this year if you're Texas A&M. And then Tennessee comes right after that, and that is the hardest team they got to play from the SEC East. Granted, they only have to play 2. Maybe one of the hardest SEC teams they got to play overall. So my biggest game for Texas A&M is the LSU game, kind of in rivalry form now. Texas A&M and LSU, it seems like they've really grown to hate. I wouldn't say hate each other. I'm not really too familiar with the rivalry, but watching it seems like it's become actually a pretty good one. Last year, not that fun of a game to watch. I do remember watching it. It was like 19-7. I believe that LSU was able to win that one. And this year, again, if Texas A&M wants to be able to go bowling, not even to just go bowling, but be able to move up in the SEC West, be able to get back in that top 3 spot that they would like to be, then these are the type of games you're going to have to take away sometimes. LSU, who knows how they're going to show out this year. So, get into my record prediction for Texas A&M, and I think they're going to go 7-6. The last 3, I feel like the last 3 previews I've done are going to be very disappointing to those teams' fans, but Texas A&M, it's a rough situation there right now. You lost so much talent after this last season. You lose Kyle Allen and Kyler Murray, your 2 quarterbacks, Trey Carson, your best running back, Tremonti Fetty, your best offensive lineman, Mike Matthews, your second best offensive lineman, and then also you lose Alonzo Williams, Brandon Williams, and Devontae Harris along the defense. So some key losses. Again, I think they can replace them. I just think there's a lot of uncertainty heading into this year. I think a bowl game and a bowl game win are imminent, so if you're looking for any positives to take away from this as a Texas A&M fan, the season should at least end on a high note. Now, obviously, Kevin Sumlin, it will be on the hot seat. I think a 7-6 year would be his last year at Texas A&M, so whether you see that as positive or negative as a Texas A&M fan, I guess it's more in the eye of the beholder. That's pretty much it. See ya.